I am fantasy author Elle Penelope, and welcome to My Imaginary Friends, a look behind the scenes at an author mapping the worlds in my head and making them a reality. Hello, friends. Today is Friday, March 15th, 2019, and this is episode 5 of My Imaginary Friends. I'm Leslie. So this week, it's been a really good week, although lots of ups and downs, and I've been feeling good and getting a lot of work done. So this week's best thing is trailers galore. There are all kinds of cool trailers that dropped this week. The first one is the new Aladdin trailer, which I saw people talking about online, as I usually do, and then I don't click the links because I when I go on social media, I'm usually on a timer so that I can get back to all of the other things that I have to do. And I didn't have time to click on the links. So I knew that it had happened. And so what usually happens, if it's something really important in the cultural zeitgeist, my husband will make me watch it. He'll let me know what the things I should click on. So all of these trailers he showed me. And so the first one was Aladdin. And I had seen the original one that everyone was kind of like, what's going on with that? But at the end of this one, I was like, yeah, looks pretty cool. Looks kind of awesome. I don't remember watching. I think Aladdin was one of those cartoons that came out when I was an adult. I meant to look up what the year was, but I didn't see it as a kid, if it even came out when I was even a child. And I probably have seen it at some point, but it didn't leave an impression on me because things like The Lion King, and definitely Little Mermaid came out when I was an actual child. But, and so those ones that I grew up with, left big impressions on me. So I was never, super interested in Aladdin, but the trailer looked cool and I'm intrigued and I love movies. So I was excited about that one. And the other one, of course, Endgame. What is it called? Avengers. No. Is it called? Yeah. Avengers Endgame. Whatever the name of that movie is, that's coming out in April. My brain. Yes, that new trailer looked very, very cool. I was into that. I liked how you have no idea what's even happening. You don't know what they're even fighting. I mean, I assume it's Thanos, but they're just suiting up and being very serious and sad, and half of everyone is gone, and it's compelling. I liked it. And then, the third one. So he just puts, my husband just puts on this thing. He's like, watch this. And I'm watching, and turns out it's the Bel Air trailer. So it's a fan-made, gritty reimagining of the Fresh Prince of Bel Air. And apparently that was everywhere too. I didn't actually see this one because I guess my timer on social media went off before I got to it. But, there's a point in the trailer where the mom was like, yeah, your Uncle Phil, made a call to bail you out. And I'm like, Uncle Phil, You can't just use Uncle Phil as a character name because it has a meaning. It's like you can't call a character Harry Potter anymore. If there are other books with that character name, you got to, from now on or from the past 20 years, you have to change it. So Uncle Phil kind of pulled me back because I didn't know what I was looking at. And then you have to go to Bel Air, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. Is this real? What's happening? What am I looking at? And yeah, at that point, you're in it. You're like, what are they doing? Wow. So that was the biggest, oh my gosh, best thing of the week. I did go see a movie this week. It did not make best thing this week. So that's all I'll have to say about that. Okay, Captain Marvel. I'm not going to go any further than that. It was fine. It was a movie that I saw. And moving on. So in writing news, of course, I got stuck again this week, and I don't remember any of the dates, but what happened was I had to stop, and, I was trying to fast draft 2 scenes a day, I think. And I don't remember the order of when this happened, but I was fast drafting as usual because I'm not done yet. And, got stopped, got hemmed up again. And this is my process. I probably forget every time that I have to go through this. And so I stopped and I looked at it and I wrote everything out by hand and reworked things. And so last in my last podcast, I talked about blood on the page, and I talked about needing to brainstorm all the worst things that could happen. And so I did that. And I did that. So if you're new, I'm working on book 3 of my fantasy trilogy. It's called Cry of Metal and Bone. And so it's, the bulk of it has been written for a very long time. And I'm weaving in a new storyline to match new storylines in the previous 2 books. And so I have these characters and it was 11 scenes, and I just kept getting stuck in the middle because what I wanted to have happen was, it wasn't realistic, and it didn't feel right. It felt like it was a very contrived set of circumstances that was happening, and that did not at all feel realistic. And at a certain point, I was like, how could she do this? Like, I'm having her do these things, and this character, it's a hairdresser, but she has certain skills, and so she is involved in sort of investigating this conspiracy. And so you have this regular person, hairdresser, who is, because of the stakes, is invested in this conspiracy and trying to take it down, even though this is not what she does in her life. But, so some of it is already pushing, your suspension of disbelief. But so everything after that needs to be very organic. You have to be able to believe that these steps she's going to take are things that she could do based on what you learn about her gifts and her skills and her motivation. And so what I had originally was just like way crazy. And I was just like, this is not going to work. So I had to rework it. And using what I was thinking about last week about the stakes and making it personal and making it emotional, what I think was happening was that I had actions happening, but it wasn't, you have to read about a character. Like, I think you're more invested when you're reading about a person whose actions are motivated by real things and real emotions. Humans are emotional beings. We're not rational beings. Contrary to popular belief, humans are not rational. Like, what we do is purely emotionally based. And so when you're reading characters in a storyline, even if it's action, and even if they're, fighting or, whatever, it's got to be about a person who's doing things for good motivations. And so I had the actions happening, and the actions by themselves in a plot probably would have been fine, and they made sense. But for this character to do them did not make sense. Long story short, reworked that and just dug a lot deeper to try to find actions that she could take that would be really well motivated and really grounded and still pushing the story forward and still having her meeting these objectives that I wanted her to have. Because I knew she could do it, but making it, just grounding it more and making it more based in emotion. And this week, there's a podcast that I listen to. It's one of my favorite writing podcasts now. It's called The Writer's Well, and it's by authors Jay Thorne and Rachel Herron. And every week they have a different question that they answer. And this week was about using intuition. And, some things just hit you right on time when you need to hear them. And so they talked about, using intuition as a writer. And everything I do is intuition. When I first conceive of a story, it's intuition, and each iteration, when I know something's not working, when I feel like it's wrong, when I'm running up against these roadblocks, it's because I have a feeling, and then I trust my gut that is saying, all right, this looked okay yesterday, but today, no, not right. And probably yesterday, you probably knew it wasn't quite right, but you were tired and you just wanted to get through it. And you knew that tomorrow you would figure something else out. So, as writers, I think we need to learn to trust our intuition. It's very difficult at the beginning because when you're starting out and you don't have any feedback, or you're in a critique group and you are getting feedback and it's pushing against what you feel, not all feedback is worthy of listening to. You really have to trust that you know your story, and trust yourself to be able to separate, the wheat from the chaff, and figure out what feedback you should listen to and what you shouldn't. And that is a skill that has to be developed, and that trust in yourself has to be developed. over time, I guess, as you write more and as you feel more confident. So I've gotten to the point where the only thing I can trust is my intuition, because sometimes with feedback, you'll get two different people saying opposite things, and that's always helpful. And so then it's like, okay, well, go back to the drawing board. What was I going for? Why? Sometimes if I'm really stuck, I have to go all the way back to, why did I want to tell the story in the first place? What about this spoke to me and impelled me to spend months of my life on it? So yeah, that discussion about intuition, it kind of just verified, someone was articulating what I feel and this process that I go through that is sometimes very maddening, but it is, I guess it's what I have to do, because I always am in this place where, 5 steps forward, 2 steps back, rework. 5 steps forward, 2 steps back, rework. And that just seems to be the way that I write. Another cool thing that happened this week was some research that I got into. So when I fast draft, I do try to just write, obviously as quickly as possible without editing. And I use a lot of placeholders for things that I don't know, because I don't like to stop and research in the middle of a draft most of the time, but there are exceptions. And so, especially when I get stuck, and I was getting out of being stuck. I'd written the plot lines by hand, rewritten the scenes that that weren't working into something that I felt was good again. And I was getting ready to write the draft, and I was like, I need a name for this character. And so in the world of the Earthsinger Chronicles, there are 5 countries that are named, I believe. All of book 1 takes place in one country, book 2 takes place in a second country, and now book 3, they are going to a third country with characters who are from a fourth country. So when I do the world building and the naming, I have naming conventions for each country, and then some countries have cultures, inside of them that have their own history, and so they have their own naming conventions for people from these different races and cultures. And occasionally a character name will just come to me as being right. And if it doesn't fit into that, then I have a reason, for it. That may not be in the book, but in my head, that's what it is. Because, sometimes parents don't follow the naming convention of their culture. They just make up something, which is, perfectly valid. So anyway, I needed a character name for a minor character, but they're from a country, this island country, and one of the main characters is from there. So I only had one last name made for the people from anybody from this country, and I had the naming convention for first names, but I needed to come up with more last names, and so I felt like it was something that I needed to do anyway, and it would help me sink into the scene more to actually have a name for this character, even though he's not a major character. But I ended up needing 2 names for 2 characters from this island. And so the first character who's always been in this book, his last name is Summerhawk. And so I was thinking, well, that would be interesting if we had, their names are, the first half is a season and the second half is an object or an animal or something. Not always an animal, but something that exists in their world and that has existed for generations. And so, but I didn't want to just be limited by 4 seasons. And because I was thinking, well, maybe back in the far history, I know that they're from this island, but thousands of years ago, they migrated from other islands further to the west. And so maybe they're all different clans and cultures that are, the same, but they're spread out. Anyway, I wanted to have 8 seasons for their names, not just 4. So then I was looking up what cultures have more than 4 seasons in them, because it stands to reason that although we have, winter, spring, summer, and fall, there's no reason why there couldn't be more. But there aren't a lot that I could find in a quick Google search. Apparently in Hindu culture, there are 6 seasons, and they add the monsoon season and something, maybe the dry season, I can't remember. And then I came across the Sami culture, which the Sami are people, they're indigenous people from Scandinavia, and sometimes they're called Laplanders. And they have 8 seasons. And so I went down a mini rabbit hole of research on them and why they have 8 seasons. And it was really interesting because their seasons and apparently their culture are based on the the life habits or the life cycle of the reindeer. And so the reindeer is very important. I think they were nomads at one point, and you have your society built around resources that are available, and reindeer apparently are the prevalent resources. And so their calendar isn't fixed. They have months, but apparently the months shift depending on what they need to be, and the names of the months, a lot of them have to do with parts of the reindeer cycle. There's like swan month and reindeer calf month, hay month, rut month. And so, when I find really interesting cultural details that exist in the world, it really helps me think more broadly about creating my cultures and creating my world, because I do that anyway. Like I think about the geography and the resources of the land and how they've impacted the people when I'm doing my world building. I don't always go down to the studs. Like this for me is kind of down to the studs, where thousands of years back, okay, what are the resources? How did they create their language? How did they create their names? Sometimes I just shortcut it and be like, okay, well, these names are kind of American-ish, or not American, because that's really English. They're kind of English, but they're different. If it's really just like a tertiary character or a country that I'm not going to focus on, then I'll take a shortcut and then just modify existing names, or change the spelling, or do something that is in that feel and that vibe. Like there's a certain race in a country called Yali that they go to in book 3, where the names are sort of biblical-ish. I think I've used some biblical names, and some of them might change. And that's a shorthand. But this island country, I don't know. I wanted, their culture's already very unique in this world. They're separated from the continent. And they're looked down on by a lot of the people on the mainland. So they have to be very different. And I wanted to know why. And so, I still haven't named all of the months, but I know I've got 8, and I've got a really interesting resource and inspiration for the 8 seasons and the names that they have. So one will probably be some kind of flood season, and then maybe a dry one. Like, think about, what do 8 seasons look like on an island? What is the weather? I've thought about this very broadly, but I need to know more about it when I write the second novella, which I'm going to be writing it this fall, because it has to do with this culture more. So, in the world building, what happens is I figure out things when I need to know them. Like I'll lay some groundwork, I'll get the basics done so I can move forward. And then when I need to know about their economics, when I need to know more about their weather, or agriculture and animals and, things like that, then I just kind of go on an as-needed basis and do a deep dive and figure a bunch of stuff out, and then go back to the writing. And this is one of those times when I didn't do a deep dive, but I just wanted to have a basis, some inspiration for, okay, if I have more than 4 seasons, what could they be? What could they be called? What could they be based on? What is this division line that they're focusing on? And so then I came up with a couple of names, and I have a story Bible where I keep all of this. I have long lists of names for each culture, so that, I already had the first name. I just picked it off the list because I had a list of first names, but I didn't have a list of last names. And so now I can come up with a list of last names if I need more for these people. And that work is done. And the world building, well, not done. I don't know if it's ever done, but I have a firmer handle on things. And part of trusting intuition is trusting your subconscious, because I do talk about, my subconscious is working in the background when I need to take time off from the story. It's because I'm letting it work, and I do trust that. And I guess that goes hand in hand with intuition. And so even though I don't always take the time out to, I could have just put in XXX, in brackets for his last name, and I'll figure this out later. That's kind of the shorthand. I just put in something that I know I can search for. I can do a global search for later and replace. But maybe part of it was procrastination, but part of it was just needing more anchors and tethers into this scene, because I had been stuck, and I really wanted to to dig deeper into it and to have a good foundation for when I wrote it, which worked. I loved the scene that I wrote, and I've been, going 2 scenes a day this week, hoping to finish the fast draft by Sunday now. Still off the schedule, of course, as usual, but that's where I'm at. The other thing I need to do before the end of the month is quarterly planning for Q2, since I took this planning class. Author Sarah Cannon has a really great planning boot camp where you do quarterly planning for your writing. And that helped me a lot this month, even though I tried to be as realistic. It helped me a lot this quarter. I tried to be as realistic as possible and still wasn't realistic enough. So a lot of things that I thought I was going to be able to get done fell off the plate for various reasons. But I'm going to try again next quarter, and really it helps so much just to be able to get a high level view. And then I do my quarterly planning, and every week I do weekly planning, and then every day I do daily planning just to get through everything. It's great. It makes me feel like fewer things are falling through the cracks, and the things I can't do, I can at least know I can't do. I can start being much more realistic about how long it takes me to do things and how much I can fit on my plate. And when I was sick, I talked about saying more no to more things, which I'm still having trouble doing, but working on it. I have a big plate, I think. It does take me a long time to burn out. And when I burn out, it's bad. So I need to continue to avoid burning out, continue to just better manage my stress, and hopefully keep my plate a little bit more reasonable. So that's it for this week. I am feeling up, not just physically, but just like emotionally. I'm feeling pretty good. When the writing goes well, it's easy to feel good. When the writing's not going well, it's kind of like, and I'm also reading something really cool. I've been in a reading slump, for a while, and there'd be a couple of things here and there, but my critique partner, one of my best friends, Inez Johnson, she told me to read this book a while ago, and I didn't, and I should have listened to her because she's very reliable in terms of book recommendations. So I'm finally reading Cold Hearted Rake by Lisa Kleypas, historical romance. Loving it. Not this week's best thing because I haven't finished it yet. Maybe next week. I don't know. By next week, I'll probably have read like 4 or 5 books in the series and be on to other things. But we'll see. We'll see how much time I have for reading. But yes, that's this week. So thanks a lot for joining me, and I will talk to you next time. For show notes and to learn more about me and my books, go to lpenelope.com. Subscribe to My Imaginary Friends wherever you get your podcasts, and check out the video episodes on YouTube. And please leave a rating and review to help support the show.